We're glad you've spent some time watching the first Nebraska Department of Natural Resources video, Staying High and Dry, Floodplain Mapping, Management, and Map Adoption in Nebraska. In this video, you'll learn more about your duties as a floodplain management administrator. Let's begin by talking about floodplain management roles and responsibilities at federal, state, and local levels of government. At the federal level, FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, is responsible for providing flood insurance rate maps and administering the National Flood Insurance Program, or NFIP. At the state level, the Nebraska Department of Natural Resources' goal is to assist counties and communities in developing sound floodplain management programs. The DNR is also available to provide technical support. Adopting floodplain regulations, however, is the domain of local governments. At the local level, your role as floodplain management administrator is to regulate any floodplain development in your jurisdiction according to the floodplain management ordinance that your city council, village board, or county board adopted. Your specific responsibilities are outlined in your ordinance. The remainder of this video is dedicated to explaining those duties and highlighting certain sections of the ordinance in more detail. As your community's floodplain administrator, your responsibilities include the following. 1. Ensure any new development in the floodplain is adequately protected and any development does not increase flooding hazards by constricting the stream channel. Remember, your floodplain ordinance defines development as more than just buildings. It includes paving, grading, or any other construction that in any way changes the topography. 2. Ensure any new development which does take place in the floodplain is built in compliance with your floodplain ordinance. It is critical that you oversee the permit process and make sure developers understand your local regulations. 3. Keep detailed records of all floodplain activities. Filling out the proper forms and keeping track of them is your proof to show FEMA that you are properly administering your local floodplain program. This includes properly completed elevation certificates. 4. Be a resource for individuals who want to know about any local flood risks. 5. Make sure your community remains in good standing with the National Flood Insurance Program so property owners can maintain their ability to purchase flood insurance. Sound like a big responsibility? Fortunately, several resources are available to help you be successful at your job. But before we go any further, let's take a closer look at some basic floodplain definitions. A 100-year flood is a flood that has a 1% chance of occurring annually. A 500-year flood is a flood that has a 0.2% chance of occurring annually. The floodway is a river channel or other watercourse, and the land area closest to it that will receive the full force of a flood. Potential development in this area cannot be allowed to increase water surface elevation past a designated height. Development is any human-initiated change to improved or unimproved real estate, including but not limited to buildings or other structures, mining, dredging, filling, grading, paving, excavation or drilling operations, or storage of equipment or materials. A basement is any part of the building where all sides of the floor are located below ground level. Now let's move on. If your community is considering development, first ask yourself, is the proposed development in the floodplain? Use a variety of resources to make this determination. Your main tool will be the Flood Insurance Rate Map, or FIRM. Some communities have been provided with digital FIRMs and use a geographical information system to help with these determinations. Other communities may use plat maps or maps from a CD-ROM provided by the Nebraska DNR. If the development is located in a floodplain development permit is required. To obtain this permit, the applicant or property owner must provide the following materials: a description of the proposed development, a description of the land where development will take place, base flood elevation measurements, lowest floor elevation measurements, development plans, and the signed permit application. It is your responsibility to ensure all other necessary local, state, and federal permits are obtained and submitted by the applicant. Development in a floodplain should be considered carefully. Not only does it put one's health and safety at risk, it also can hit the pocketbook. There is a mandatory flood insurance requirement for buildings in a floodplain that are secured with federally backed loans, and insurance premiums are more expensive in a floodplain. The floodplain administrator may also want to ask the applicant whether it is absolutely necessary to build in the floodplain and encourage the applicant to scout out alternative locations. Development in a floodway is a different situation. Not all communities have a floodway identified on their floodplain maps. Check your map legend to see if the floodways have been specified. Remember, you can always call the Nebraska Department of Natural Resources for assistance. In Nebraska, new residential structures are prohibited in a mapped floodway. This is for obvious safety concerns since the floodway is the area of highest flow velocity during a flood. However, state statute does not prohibit all development in a floodway. Non-residential development is allowed if the building is elevated and/or dry flood-proofed. In either case, it must meet the no-rise certification criteria. The no-rise certificate must be completed by a registered engineer. Attach the document to the floodplain development permit. As we all know, nearly all buildings in Nebraska have basements, and understanding floodplain issues concerning basements is part of your role as the floodplain administrator. Remember, FEMA says a basement is where all sides of the floor are located below ground level. Most local ordinances use the state minimum standard, which requires the lowest floor of a home built in a floodplain to be at least 1 foot above the base flood elevation. You may be more familiar with the term 100-year flood elevation, which is another way to describe the base flood elevation. Whether a full basement, a walkout basement, or a subgrade crawl space, these all would be considered the lowest floor level of a structure and must meet the 1 foot above base flood elevation requirement. Non-residential development is treated differently. Basements below the base flood elevation are allowed, but adequate floodproofing is required. All areas below base flood elevation must be watertight and impermeable. Walls and foundations must also be built to withstand high water pressure. Finally, an architect or engineer will need to certify the floodproofing. Areas below the base flood elevation can be used for parking and limited storage, as long as proper venting is installed. Most building codes require vents for air circulation and flood management. Besides supplying air, vents allow water to flow under the structure during a flood to stabilize pressure against the foundation. Each vent must have 1 square inch of opening for every square foot of enclosed space. Vents must be installed in at least 2 walls. If a vent is covered with bars or screening to keep out pests, the covering's cross-sectional area must be deducted from the vent opening area to meet size requirements.
Hi, I'm Bill Jones, a floodplain management specialist here at the Department of Natural Resources. Our department is available to help ensure that development in your community is built to be less vulnerable to the damage of future flooding. If you have questions about floodplain management or the National Flood Insurance Program, we are available to support you and provide technical assistance. In Nebraska, permitting authority lies at the local level. You, as floodplain administrators, issue the permits that ensure development is safe and meets local requirements. Thank you for taking your job seriously as floodplain administrators.
Anyone planning to build in a floodplain will need to do so according to your community's ordinance. The ordinance and the permit process are the best tools to ensure safety for you, your neighbors, and your community. And remember, the Nebraska Department of Natural Resources is always available to support you.